Hello and welcome to The Smartest Moron, where I hope this is the only time I ever have to do this. Looking at the side content. For those unaware, I hate it when media for certain titles are split up like this. It makes things inconsistent, especially if it's not announced or remains exclusive to one country, made worse if it's knowledge that is necessary to get into the game. Sure, some info might be decently woven into the story, but then you get stuff like Xenosaga 3, which tries to explain and doesn't do an effective job in order to get the full emotion out of some scenes. Or you get Final Fantasy 13, and good luck with that mess. And I don't think I need to mention Kingdom Hearts, although nowadays at least the games are now just bundled up, and the only issue there is free time. You know, barring the mobile game that has pushed me further away from the series. But still, sometimes the media can be good, or even the game itself can stand on its own fairly well, like Nier Automata. I praised the anime of Final Fantasy 15, and fortunately that's still up for people to see with subtitles on YouTube. Plus, I did technically look at the side media for that game, so I think it's fair that I look at it for Xenosaga, especially considering they just couldn't fit these into Game 3 properly. I heard time constraints were the issue, and seeing the final product, it shows, feeling like two games were mashed together. So why not see what we missed? I won't go step by step with Pied Piper's story though, since the script is long, and I would prefer if this video didn't go over 20 minutes. That, and it's hard to review a story based purely on the script. Chances are I would have to take the footage and the script and edit together for a video in order to get like a proper look at it, and even then I tried downloading some of that footage and, well, I couldn't really hear the music all that well anyway. Xenosaga Pied Piper is a mobile game released in 2004 exclusively in Japan. The story is about Ziggy before he became a cyborg, where he was the leader of a squad of soldiers who pursued criminals who were in the UMN. One such criminal was named Voyager, who you may recognize as the Black Testament. If you somehow managed to beat Xenosaga 2 anyway. Ziggy's real name at this time was Jan Sauer, and even back then, he hid his emotions for the sake of the mission, but he isn't quite a cold engine of logic. Voyager also liked to attack children, it seems, which definitely ups his creepiness factor. Even worse is that he seems to force his victims to quote the Bible, which, well, to a guy whose diet lacks sophistication, it sounds like... I'm just gonna bring up an Ultimate Warrior clip.
How must I prepare, you must ask yourself? Should I jump off the tallest building in the world? Should I lay on the lawn and let him run over me?
He also tries to dig a bit deeper into the conflict between the immigrant fleet and the Federation, since this is set 100 years before the games, even bringing in Dmitry Yuriev. Yuriev serves as a secondary antagonist to the group, working with Voyager, and even makes Jan's team wanted criminals due to his high position. Throughout the game, Jan and his subordinates try to keep the peace and track down Voyager, all while Jan keeps encountering a woman named Sharon, eventually growing a bond with her as she helps him with the case. He would eventually marry her as well, even living with her and her son, who even acknowledged him as his dad very quickly. The game also dives into some unexplored subjects. Remember how characters can dive into the subconscious of others? The game actually goes into detail as to what would happen if someone dived into a dead person, revealing some memories are active, but it's very dangerous and risky to do so. Also, apparently Jan can't hold his own with booze, so he passes out after one drink. The Realian known as Lactus is also an important member of Jan's squad, given what happens between Voyager and Ziggy's final battle in Game 3. Now, it's very easy for me to say that Voyager is just a creepy and evil individual and just ruin Jan's life and just leave it at that. However, there's far more to it to make the impact even worse. You see, Jan's subordinates are given a fair amount of personality, enough that you might grow attached to them. One such person was named Eric, a man who managed to escape death during one mission, and his survival kinda even helped Jan and Sharon's relationship. In reality, however, he was suffering from a split personality disorder, and the other personality was Voyager. It's even brought up in Xenosaga 3, with Ziggy calling Voyager by his other name. So the person Jan was chasing down, the man who made him lose a ton of his comrades, forced Jan to kill one of his own friends when he made Mikhail go insane, and even murder the new family he found right in front of him, was his own subordinate. Voyager even thinks he's doing a good thing, killing people so they don't fear death.
There is logic in what he says.
Want to know something worse about the murder of Jan's family? They wanted to be reunited with the original man in their lives, the original husband/father. Granted, Voyager is manipulating them and the dude became crazy from Udu, but those lines are spoken right in front of Jan, right before they're killed, and I can't even begin to imagine his thought process. And now it suddenly makes more sense why he wants to forget about all of this stuff. Jan tries to fight Voyager and even seems to have an upper hand, until Wilhelm comes in to make him a testament. After the Zenkai boost, Voyager is basically unstoppable. He offers Jan the same chance he got, to become a testament. He also reveals Lactus is actually Kanan and was an observer meant to see the potential in people, presumably those who would become a testament or just give information to Wilhelm. Given how Voyager would just kill him if he said no, Jan elects to take his own life instead, trying to make his own choice. There is technically a bit more stuff, but you're probably better off just reading about the game. At first, I was gonna say this was not totally necessary, and then I played Xenosaga 3 and realized that without the knowledge of Pied Piper, certain scenes involving Kanan and Voyager are gonna be a tad confusing. It was an enjoyable read, and it's a shame the game was on phones only. Fortunately, there is a fan manga being made, so you can check that out too. Maybe play some Xenosaga music in the background while you read either the script or the manga. It's technically not finished, but it's getting there. Now it's time for A Missing Year, a series of videos released just as Xenosaga 3 was coming out, and then removed. To be fair, this was apparently done before the days of YouTube and video streaming, and as you can imagine, it was also in Japanese, so we wouldn't get a translation for this for quite some time. Anyway, what happened between games 2 and 3 was this. Xion returned to working with Vector for about half a year, and during that time the Gnosis threat kept growing much larger. During the investigation, they find an amnesiac Realian who they believe is linked to the Gnosis, which causes Xion concern that her normal stability would once again be upset. Granted, I think with the Gnosis still active and her in charge of the one thing that could turn the tide of this war, it was gonna happen anyway. Speaking of which, guess what happens next? A mysterious character attacks the group and manages to steal the girl away, even after Jin arrives on the scene. They eventually discover the intentions of the mysterious woman known as Doctus, who is working with an organization that seems to be anti-UMN. Sounds weird considering that UMN is basically cyberspace and the internet, right? Well, that was what I first thought, and boy does it get a bit more complicated from there. It's even necessary for traveling the solar system, which is very important for the finale of Game 3. Unfortunately for the gang, Doctus here is a remote-controlled android, and is strong enough to even damage Kos-mos, escaping once again. Also, during the scene, they finally remember they had the eggs units, although now I'm wondering where the hell the ES unit Dinah is. The main antagonist reveals himself as Grimoire Verum, a guy who looks like a priest and can summon Gnosis thanks to a program he developed. Xenosaga 3 barely mentions this guy, and yet he's already more interesting than the main bad guy of Game 2. The little girl's name is also Nephilim, the same name that the other girl had in Game 1. Despite being an amnesiac, she only remembers Grimoire and just wants his help. Jin and Xion try to rescue Nephilim while Kos-mos is getting upgraded, and that goes about as well as you expect, with Doctus cornering them immediately. Meeting the leader of Scientia, he explains some info regarding the girl in the Gnosis, revealing how the consciousness actually stays intact. I didn't mention that in Game 1, but yeah, people can either turn to salt or just flat out turn into a Gnosis. It's one of the major fears Xion had, afraid of turning out like Cherenkov since she was touched by one, though nothing really happened. This also happened to Kevin's mother in the beginning of Game 3, transforming into a monster just as she sends her son off the planet to protect him. The UMN also seems to be housing the Gnosis as well. Meanwhile, Vector themselves seems to be covering this up as they were given the right to mess with it. Naturally, Xion doesn't exactly take this news very well. And honestly, let's face it, Vector's a greedy corporation. Of course they would just shove all this shit under a rug.
I don't know which species is worse. You don't see them fucking each other over for a goddamn percentage.
The Uzuki siblings have to play along with Scientia since they hold all the cards at the moment. Also, while Nephilim is being analyzed, she seems to be very afraid of Jin for some reason. Things once again go wrong, with Doctus trying to gain more info, leading to something. It basically KOs Xion, where she's on a table, naked. I have many questions, but you're probably distracted by anime titty. Jin is of course very upset by this, actually showing more range in his emotions as he's extremely fearful for Xion's life, giving him a grim reminder of his failure to save his parents 14 years ago. Since Nephilim apparently teleported to the UMN, it's assumed Xion's consciousness also resides there too. The other Nephilim we know finally appears, being less cryptic for once and telling Jin of the area where Xion and the blonde Nephilim can be found. With Grimoire holding Xion captive within Vector, Jin takes hold of an ES and flies off. In the meantime, Grimoire finally appears and... Okay, I'm just curious, are we sure this isn't Kotomine Kirei with a beard? There's technically a digital version of him in Fate Extra, and I don't trust that one in the slightest. Well anyway, turns out he wanted Nephilim to gather some fragments of something to fulfill his mission, and will help her in return by implanting good memories. Xion has done nothing this entire time until they try to leave. Smooth. Jin and Doctus eventually arrive, with the latter staying behind to smash up some robots while the Uzuki siblings pursue Grimoire. But that's just what he wanted, trapping Jin and revealing some revelations, like that he is the father of the orange-haired Nephilim and is willing to use her song, which is dangerous by the way if you remember the Berserk Realians, all to bring her into this section of cyberspace. So why is there a blonde Nephilim? Well, that Realian is meant to house her soul. That goes about as well as you'd expect, with her growing more insane and distraught over the idea. And that kinda keeps up with Momo's storyline, of wanting to be yourself over being someone else. This Nephilim, regardless of what Grimoire planned, already developed her own personality. Sure, she wants her own memories, but even now she is different from the Nephilim Grimoire knows of. But unlike Yuli, who learned to value Momo for who she is rather than who she represents, aka her dead daughter, Grimoire takes it to the other extreme, not caring who he hurts just so his daughter can come back to him. And when confronted with this fact, he brushes off those concerns and tries to spin it around to make himself look good. He's driven by such selfish desires that it's endangering the entire universe, since the Song of Nephilim will also summon the Gnosis. And unfortunately, the blonde Nephilim is turned into a Gnosis. Fortunately though, kos-mos arrives in her version 3 upgrade, assisting the Uzuki siblings. Jin is ready to kill the Gnosis, with Jian understandably upset. Despite their bonding in this miniseries, this seems to be where their hearts begin to clash, as Jin realizes there's no hope for her. Or at least it seems so. Apparently Nephilim was just perfectly fine and just stuck in the thing. Jian is able to see her memories, discovering her true name is Almadel, and she was being experimented on by Jian and Jin's father, Suo Uzuki. Given how similar they look, it was why she feared Jin, subconsciously remembering the experiments she went through. Jian was even close to Almadel as a child, bringing flowers to her bedside. Despite a rather touching moment of them bonding, there's still the song that has to be stopped, which it seems it can't unless Almadel dies. So Almadel makes herself vanish to save everyone, with Jian left in despair at her passing. All the others watch on, even as Jian calls out to Jin to stop this. As the place starts to fade away, Jian is reluctant to leave, until Jin slaps her. AKA the thing many people wanted to do to Jian after a certain scene in Game 3. Despite that, his words are able to have an effect on her, and everyone is able to make it out. However, there were consequences when messing with Vector. On top of Vector covering everything up, the military began to take control of certain projects, and Jian was demoted for her actions. Until a new chief was named, the kos-mos project would be frozen. Faced with doubt and bitterness toward the UMN and Vector, she just quit outright, leaving Alan and the others to look after kos-mos. From there, she will find out the truth on her own, which leads us into Xenosaga 3. Overall, A Missing Year definitely has an interesting story. It's just not told as best as it can. I wish the story was part of Game 2, for Grimoire is far more interesting than Sergius, and much like Pied Piper, you gotta see this story before diving into Xenosaga 3. I mean, in that game's defense, they do try to explain things. Try being the key word. It's like going into an anime while missing an arc that was meant to define a main character. Also, it's a shame Doctus isn't playable in Game 3, or at least a bonus boss fight, considering her skills in fending off kos-mos are impressive. I want that rematch, damn it! Anyway, thank you for joining me, and I hope this at least helped guide those who want to get into Xenosaga 3 a bit easier. Speaking of which, next time, we can finally close out the Xenosaga series with the review of Xenosaga 3. And no, I'm not covering Xenogears yet, at least let me have a break.